surround and you uphold me. And your promises are mighty light. Your plans are still to prosper. You're not forgotten us. You're with us in the fire and the flood. You're faithful forever, perfect in love. You are sovereign, Lord. And again, your plans are still to prosper. Your plans are still to prosper. You've not forgotten us. You're with us in the fire and the flood. You're faithful forever, perfect in love. You are sovereign over. We rest in you. Just let the sovereignty of God just wash over you now. Just surrender control to the King of Reigns. Even what the enemy means for evil, you turn it for our good. You turn it for our good and for your glory. Even in the valley, you are faithful. You're working for our good. You're working for our good and for your glory. Come on, declare that tonight. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over
invitations for ways to get involved.
Good morning. My name's Jody Warlow. I'm so glad that you guys are all here this morning. So we have, if we have any guests here today, we would love to know who you are. And after our first service over at the Connection Station, we'd love to know who you are, talk with you, maybe get you to fill out a form so we can get more information on you. We really want you to feel welcome here, but we don't want to overwhelm you, so we won't do that. So we'd love to just see you if you would come back over to that area. If you want to partner with us financially, we'd love that, actually. There's 3 ways to give here at Grace. So that app that you downloaded just a few weeks ago, there's a tab on there that you can open up, and you can conveniently and securely figure out a way to give on that. Another way that you can give here at Grace, we have collection boxes on the back wall of the sanctuary, so you're welcome to drop your gift in there as well. And then if you're at home and you just want to mail us a check, you can do that to the P.O. box that is listed. It doesn't say P.O. box, but it is. So there's a P.O. box, and you can send your check to that as well. Next Sunday is the 5th Sunday of the month, and that's considered Super Sunday here at Grace. It's an opportunity for all of our next generation ministries to join together. Our big kids, those student ministries, they will be working with those kids, the younger elementary age kids. It's a great time for connection where those big kids can pour into those younger kids with games, songs, and a way to build relationships. So if you're a big kid in high school or middle school, we'd love for you to reach out to Noah, figure out a way that you can be involved in that, maybe what you want to lead, maybe you have some good games that you remember from when you were younger. And if you're a younger kid in 1st through 5th grade, you can look forward to next week really getting to know some of those big kids in high school. And then, as you know, we do love to partner with our community here with Engage Fayette. So we are partnering with Fayette Factor, and we are offering the Intervene Challenge next month. Jenny Anderson. So Jenny Anderson has been involved with this program. She went through this training, and so we would love for her to come and talk a little bit about that as well. So as we do partner with these other organizations, we love to be able to live generously with what we have, with our skills, with our talents, and Intervene Challenge is one way that we are able to do that in our community. Jenny, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
I would love to. In fact, I'm excited to. I saw a while ago a notice about this suicide intervention. And I've had friends who have committed suicide and talked with people who were contemplating it. And I thought, I need the skills and the tools to talk with these people. So I went, and I was not disappointed. In fact, I used a lot of what I learned to have really meaningful conversations with friends. And then I learned that one of my friends actually had gone before me, like a year or 2 before I had gone, and one of her relatives, one of her family members, was depressed, and the person was contemplating suicide. And because she asked these different questions, these tools that we are taught by this fella, the relative is still alive today because he was considering suicide. So I just want to encourage you, if you have the time, it's worth every minute of going and being in this seminar or this teaching. It's worth going, and it's going to be next Saturday at 9 o'clock.
Yes, it's 9 to 2 next Saturday here at Grace. So we'd love to have you join us for that. I was talking with Jenny yesterday about it, and they have an incredible model. Do you remember the model, Jenny, that you learned?
Ask.
You said ask. Yeah, it talks all about listening, right?
Yes, ask and listen. And you know, the word suicide has been a stigma. Mm-hmm. And it really isn't. We need to, the more I talk with people, the more I have found out that friends and relatives have committed suicide. And it's so important not to be afraid of the word, but to ask a person, are you thinking about committing suicide? And it actually takes the steam or the plan out of that what the person is thinking, because they get to talk about it. Right. So it is just so important.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. So we would love to have you guys join us next Saturday, October 28th, here at Grace. So it's Dr. Kenneth Lee Kuhn. He has developed this program. It's called Listen, Lean, Learn. That's the model. I think those are the three things. Yes? Oh, fantastic. Good. So we would love to have you join us because truly listening is it's the best skill that you can have in this, really understanding the perspective that these people are really struggling with. So if you are a mental health professional or in the law enforcement, you do get educational credits for coming to this, but it's not just for those people, it's for everyone. 1 in 20 people think about suicide. It's far less that do attempt it, but it's on people's minds. So if you look around, there's people in here who have felt hopeless. So we would love for you to come and be able to have some tools to be able to speak into their lives. Thanks so much, Jenny. So if you want more information on that or anything else that's happening at Grace, we would love for you to go to our website gracefayette.org, and really look around and see ways that you can join us in our family and join in on what we're doing here at Grace. So we've talked a lot about some of the things that are happening, and now we're about to transition into worship. And I'm not sure what you brought with you to church this morning, but I know I brought a lot. I come to church loaded literally every week. Whether it's my kids or that I'm coming alone, or when I get here and I go, oh, I just don't want to walk in there, or where am I going to sit? There's always something that we bring. And then we walk in here and we put on this face and we're like, we're good. Yeah, we love it here. I don't know what you bring, but Jesus does, and he wants to show up in the midst of that, and he wants to show up in those hard places in your life, and he wants to be present. So I truly hope that you feel Jesus here this morning. I pray that you would open your hearts to him and that you would welcome him into those small, dark spaces that you don't want to show your neighbors. I'm so grateful, again, that you guys are all here this morning. All right.
I'm going to use this one. Kind of hidden behind everyone this morning, so I'm going to come forward. Good morning. As Jody said, really glad you're here to worship with us this morning. If you're visiting us in the room or online, we are here to gather, to worship the glory of God, and to submit ourselves and our lives to him. And my name is Isaac Webb. Our worship pastor is away leading a retreat this morning, so I'm filling in for him. And I was thinking this week, it was almost 15 years ago that I brought my family here to Grace. And as I look around the room, most of the faces are unfamiliar. So if you have been here for less than 10, less than 5 years, maybe even less than 2 years, you are probably the majority in this room. And what has not changed about this, even though the people have changed, the culture of worship here has been the same. This has never felt like a stage and an audience. This has always been a work of the people coming together to worship. And I just so appreciate that about this body, this congregation, that we are doing this together. This is a living room, and we're all family here expressing our love to God as he expresses his love to us. So let's join together this morning. Let's stand. If you're visiting, just join this family this morning. Glad you're with us. And we're going to read our call to worship. It comes from the lectionary this morning. It's Psalm 99. And let's say this together. Let's declare this together. The Lord reigns. Let the nations tremble. He sits enthroned between the cherubim. Let the earth shake. Great is the Lord in Zion. He is exalted over all the nations. Let them praise your great and awesome name. He is holy. The King is mighty. He loves justice. You have established equity in Jacob. You have done what is just and right. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at his footstool. He is holy. Moses and Aaron were among his priests. Samuel was among those who called on his name. They called on the Lord, and he answered them. He spoke to them from the pillar of cloud. They kept his statutes and the decrees he gave them. Lord our God, you answered them. You were to Israel a forgiving God, though you punished their misdeeds. Exalt the Lord our God, and worship at his holy mountain. For the Lord our God is holy. All right, let's sing of his holiness, blessing and honor, glory and power. Blessing and honor, glory and power be unto your name, O Lord. Blessing and honor, Faith and obedience lives on remembrance and repetition. And when we come together each week to worship, we are remembering who God is, what he's done, what he's capable of. We're inviting him into our lives. And as we experience his glory and his splendor, we naturally see ourselves, and we are called to surrender. We are called to yield, to confess our need of God. So this morning we've sung about his glory and his deep, deep love for us. And now, let's make this close, this intimate, as David would write in the Psalms. You knew me in my mother's womb. So this is an imminent moment as we come from experiencing God's glory to his closeness, his nearness. Just sing to the Lord right from your heart. In my mother's womb, you formed me with your hands, known and loved by you. Before I took a breath, when I doubted, you reminded I'm wonderfully made. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And you made all things work together for my future and for my good. And you make all things work together for your glory and for your name. There's a healing light just beyond the clouds. Though I walk through fire, I see clearly now. I know nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And you make all things work together for my future and for my good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name. You make all things work together for my future and for my good. And you make all things work together for your glory and for your name. Down, Lord, remind me I'm wonderfully made. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And I know nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And you make all things work together for my future and for your good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name.
Let us all pray together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. You may be seated.
This is a great opportunity for our children who are up to grade 5 to meet your teachers in the back room. And folks, you'll be able to collect them a little later. We're not keeping them forever. And I would like to ask you to take this moment to start practicing the lessons of community and just greet one another. Try to find somebody you've never met before and say hello and greet them and just welcome each other to grace.
Well, good morning. Good to see you this morning. Last Tuesday, Vernon and I left town and we headed up to what for us is probably the most favorite part of the country, Western North Carolina. And I look around the room, and I know many people are doing the same this weekend to catch the fall leaves. And we traveled hoping to catch peak season. Verna's family, Verna's sister owns a lovely home in the mountains just outside Brevard. And as we were driving up the mountain going over Caesar's Head, my body just began to relax. Just in the beauty of the leaves and all that was there. We arrived late Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday morning, Verna was meeting her mother in Brevard. And Karen, Verna's mother, who is 88, is as active and as healthy as any 88-year-old person you've ever met. And she is as prompt as your watch. And she didn't show up after 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And so Verna called me. I came down and picked up Verna. We headed over to Karen's house, and she had a stroke. And it was a minor stroke, but we got into the house and called 911, of course, and they came, and we were now in the ER in Brevard and just hanging out in the ER. Wednesday, was it Wednesday? No, it was Thursday. Verna and I went to the hospital in the morning to visit with Karen, and Verna's sister was with us, and just to kind of get an update on her MRI and how she was doing, and she looked great. She had a great 24 hours. While we were in the room, Verna's blood pressure and heart rate suddenly dropped. Fortunately, we're now in a hospital. And the doctor's in the room with us and is watching this go on. And her heart rate dropped to something like 84 over 40 something. And all the attention turned to Verna. And the next thing I know, we were being escorted to the ER in the other wing of the hospital. And so we spent Thursday again in the ER, so not quite the trip we had planned on. Karen at one end, Verna at the other end, and they both got released about the same time, late Thursday. So God was good. They're both doing well. They're both resting well, and we're grateful for God's provision. And then we got to enjoy a little bit of the beauty on Friday before we headed back. So thanks for all of you who prayed for us. I know many of you have been in touch with us and have been praying for us, and we're very grateful. for your prayer support over these past couple of days. We're in a special series that we do a couple of times a year called Practicing the Way. And if you were with us last week, you know that we handed out some bookmarks which overview 9 of the 12 practices. Not all 12 are listed here. If you didn't get one of these, I encourage you to pick one up. You'll see them on the tables in the back. And they overview the practices. But what we've tried to do with this, more than just highlighting the practices themselves, we've tried to create a contrast as to why the practice is so needed today in this cultural moment. So, for example, a community of rest in a culture of hurry and exhaustion to the practice of Sabbath. So pick these up, take a look at them. We'll be coming back to that. We're just this week and next week we'll be wrapping up our series on community. But our emphasis this month is on community. And I want to read together an affirmation from this. It's the practice that's taken, you'll find it on your bookmark. And I'd like us to read this together as a community. So would you join me? We are a people who practice the way of Jesus, a community of love and depth in a culture of individualism and superficiality to the practice of community. That's who we aspire to be. Well, last week, we looked at Jesus' parable of the soils, and we thought about the role that the health of our soul plays in our experience of community. When we come into relationships, and again, we're broadening the sense of community, not only limited to a small group experience, but what you experience in your marriages with your children or grandchildren, in your close friendships in the neighborhood. Think of community as all the spectrum of all of your relationships. And what we talked about last week is, are you arriving with a hard soul? Or are you arriving with a shallow, superficial soul, a cluttered soul that's preoccupied by so many things? Or are you arriving with a fruitful soul? Well, on another occasion, and we're going to kind of turn that a little bit and think in similar lines. On another occasion, Jesus was asked a very pointed question by an Old Testament scholar. And the question was this: of all the commandments, which is the most important? And those of you who have been around the New Testament, you're familiar with the question. It's a great question, actually. And you remember Jesus' response. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. We read Jesus' words, and they are straightforward and simple. Love God with your whole person. Love people as you love yourself. And on the surface of that, it seems clear enough. Love God, love people. Love people, love God. But as we all experience, loving God and loving others in this way is challenging. Lots of reasons. I want to focus on one this morning. I believe maybe the top of the list, maybe the most important reason this is so challenging, and yet it's rarely considered. And so some of what I'm going to share with you may be new to some of you today, as we are doing a lot of learning. But here's the big idea of what we're going to talk about this morning. We bring the ways that we experience love or didn't experience love from our caregivers into our relationship with God and others. Let me repeat that. We bring the ways we experienced or didn't experience love from our caregivers into our relationship with God and others. In other words, our family of origin, our parents, they profoundly shape our capacity in how we enter in relationship with God and others. Now, maybe the easiest way to illustrate this is by using part of my story. And some of you have heard parts of this. I'm going to just condense a little bit. My family, there were 4 of us, 4 children, 2 adults. I was the oldest, son, daughter. And my family, from its very beginning was marked by conflict. Going back to from the time I was 7 or 8, all of my memories are of my mom and dad fighting. My dad yelling, my mom in tears. Over the years, the words eventually turned physically abusive. And as a young boy, I would retreat to the safety of my bedroom. We lived in a very small home, maybe 1,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. And I would retreat into the safety, if you will, of my bedroom. The walls were thin. You could still hear everything that was going on. I would shut the door, and I would simply wait it out. Nothing was ever resolved. Nothing ever said to us. No conversation, no family meetings, nothing like that ever took place. Nothing was ever resolved. And over the years, in the midst of all this conflict, Mom did the best she could to raise 4 of us functionally as a single parent. She never left my father. She stayed in the relationship, but Dad was rarely around, rarely home. He was emotionally detached. And as the oldest, as I kind of moved into my middle school years, my mom looked to me to play the role of father for my brothers and sisters. There was, when I look back at our family system, there was no involvement or investment in our lives on any level. No help with schoolwork, no showing up at games and school activities, little affirmation or discipline. Our home was not a safe place. And so by the time that we were in high school, all 4 of us were rarely home. We found our own ways of coping and escaping from our family system. And what I would say about it is it's simply the way our family functioned. It was our normal. And we didn't understand much beyond that. That was just the way our family functioned. And as I look back upon it with the benefit of decades, my siblings and I paid a high price for growing up in our family. For many years, I assumed the role of being the responsible older son in the home. And it would shape so much of how I view my life as an adult. Perfectionism. I was a perfectionist who worked hard in school and sports. But during that season of my life, I was always anxious. I was a chronic nail biter well into adulthood. Had all kinds of nervous kind of habits. And by the time I was in high school, I checked out emotionally. And I stopped being that responsible one within our family. I detached from my family. And it's taken decades to repair the damage. And that's a whole nother story. Well, while this was going on, my mom, who became a Christian when I was probably 8 or 9, dropped us into a Baptist church. Mom would take us, and church afforded me a different life. And it was the first time for me when I started hanging around with different families that were different than my family, and I was, my normal is not everybody's normal. And church afforded me a different way of life. I came to Christ in middle school at First Baptist Church of Wayne, and the church community became my family. And by God's grace, there were men who loved me and discipled me who became fathers to me. Marge Baker, the mother of my closest friends, stepped into my life as a mother. And this church family began the lifelong work of repair and redemption that my life needed. And as a result, my life took a dramatically different course. And of course, I'm profoundly grateful to God for that. And it was the experience in community that rescued me and redirected my life. But as I moved into adulthood, And I'm covering decades now, but as I moved into adulthood, as a husband, as a father, as a follower of Jesus, and as a pastor, I still carried with me relational patterns that were embedded in me from within my family, by my family. Those were just core to who I was. They had shaped me. And I won't go into all the neurobiology of it all, but it had formed and profoundly affected my outlook on life and how I saw relationships. And there were messages that were unspoken, but existed within my way of thinking. For example, and now that I've told you briefly some of my family, some of these messages they just grew out of my story. Here was a big one. You're on your own. You can't look to anyone to take care of you. You've got to take care of yourself. And there was a deeply central, deeply rooted sense of self-sufficiency because no one had taken care of me until I was in high school. And there was messages that I've carried with me. Here's another one. If you want people to accept and love you, you've got to earn their approval by your performance. Be the best kid in class. Be the best baseball player. Be the best in the marching band. Be the best Christian. And you'll gain the approval and respect of people. Deeply embedded in the way I think. Here's the third message that was embedded during that season. The people closest to you are not safe. You can't trust them. And so keep people at enough distance because those, once they get too close, they're going to hurt and betray you. And maybe the most damaging message that came out of my family of origin was this. I learned how to be physically present but emotionally absent. I couldn't escape my house as a little boy. I would disappear into my bedroom. I was physically present, but I learned to emotionally pull the shade down. That was how I survived in my home. It's how I would try to survive as an adult. It has wreaked all kinds of havoc in my marriage, my relationship with my kids, and even people in the churches I've led. Now, here's a curious thing. None of these patterns were conscious. It wasn't like I was thinking about these things. They were embedded into my personal belief and operating system. I didn't have to think about the patterns. It's as if they were hardwired into me. It's because they were. And so as a result, when I look back and some of the implications to our spiritual life, for me and my story, trusting God and feeling safe with people have been lifelong challenges for me. Learning to trust God has not been an easy get for me. Feeling safe with people has not been an easy get for me. Loving God and loving people, going back to what Mark talked about in Mark 12, loving God and loving people have been a work in progress that reflects the miracle of spiritual transformation. Now, eventually, now push forward, I'm well into my late 40s, early 50s now, and I've been chasing this for all kinds of years, but I eventually learned that my relational patterns were deeply rooted in my relationship with my parents. Kurt Thompson, some of you recognize the name. Kurt is a follower of Jesus. He's a psychiatrist, an author, and I had the privilege of attending a number of retreats with Kurt and enjoyed having some personal conversation with him back in the early 2000s. And in one of his books, The Anatomy of the Soul, the surprising connections between neuroscience and spiritual practices that can transform your life and relationships, he wrote this. A child will absorb his mother's anxiety simultaneously with the milk from her breast. He or she will distinguish the relative gentleness or roughness, or for that matter, the very presence or absence of the father's physical touch. The child will notice the timing and intensity of the parent's responses to pleasure as well as to distress. And here's what the point that I really want you to hear. The child's brain will begin to register the general level of safety, tranquility, or chaos generated in the presence of each primary figure with whom he or she connects. And the nature of the child's relationship with his or her parents shapes the neural networks in a fashion that will have lifelong implications. There's shaping that goes on in this dynamic relationship between caregivers and children, early experiences with our caregivers, and how they respond to our needs, which psychologists today and researchers refer to as attunement, the degree to which our caregivers are attuned to the needs and dynamics of their children become the basis for the ways that we actually attach to God and people. Our capacity to attach to God, attach to people. And I'm talking more about emotionally here. I'm not talking about intellectually. I'm talking about our capacity to emotionally attach to God, emotionally attach to people, are closely connected to this dynamic. The level of attunement and attachment in our family plays a critical role in our capacity to love God and love people. Another author, Undi Kolber, in her book, Try Softer. By the way, excellent book, would highly recommend it. She wrote, when our childhood interactions with our caregivers are healthy, marked by attunement and consistent repair, they pave the way for us to feel safe, to learn how to regulate our emotions, to be willing to try new things, and to develop frameworks for future relationships. If at any point during development, children experience untrustworthiness, disengagement, or abuse from their caregivers without appropriate repair, their attachment styles will be affected. Now, of course, let me say the obvious, even the most loving of parents don't respond to their children perfectly, right? None of us can. None of us do. There's not a parent in this room. I mean, we all look back and we realize we're flawed, we struggle. But the beauty of this is it's not about perfection. You see, when caregivers recognize the harm that they are doing in a moment and they figure out a way to repair the relationship with honesty and humility, the relationship is restored and resilience is developed. God redeems it. It's this wonderful cycle of repair and redemption that takes place within families that are very imperfect that God uses. Now, why does this matter in our conversation about community? Well, here's the bottom line. We bring our relational attachment patterns into community with us. And we could look at the other component of this and think not just of yourself, but think of others. The people we encounter bring their relational attachment patterns with them into community, and they collide. See, we're bringing ourselves into community. And if we do not do the work of repair from the attachment styles we developed as children, all of our later relationships will be impacted. And we will operate from that style in other relationships because that is what is most normal to us. It's not even a conscious thing. Don't have to think about it. Now, again, I'm wanting to be sure I'm bringing some hope and grace here. Your attachment style doesn't mean this is a life sentence for you. It's not. But it's an invitation to notice the ways our stories impact all of our relationships. Notice the ways other people's stories have impacted them. It's also an invitation for us to find the needed healing and repair in community with one another. That's part of the beauty of community. It becomes the place where we get to change and we get to become family. Well, that was my introduction. I want to share some slides with you, and this is going to be ridiculously brief. I mean, it's going to be fast. But I want to introduce you to something. So, Jonathan, bring the first slide up, if you will. Researchers over the years, and I won't bore you with all the details, we now understand a lot about different attachment styles. And while we never want to put anyone in a box and say you're locked in, they all kind of overlap and bleed, we can see general tendencies. And on this particular visual, and I'm going to use some very uncharacteristic, I'm going to use a variety of slides that we have developed for you this morning. I want you to notice the axis: low avoidance, high avoidance. Low avoidance simply means you just move into relationships very comfortably. You don't avoid people. High avoidance is you avoid them like crazy. You have a high avoidance. And then the other pole is low anxiety and high anxiety. You bring a lot of anxiety into the relationship, or you don't bring anxiety in the relationship. And then in each of these quadrants, you see what we identify as 4 primary styles of attachments. Upper left is secure. I guess you see it as secure, preoccupied, dismissing, avoidant, and fearful avoidant. So just hang with me for a little while. I think once we walk through some of this, you're going to go, you'll probably see yourself. You'll probably see each other. You'll see other people, and you'll recognize some things. And then I'm going to come back, and we're going to apply it in a very practical way. And so, again, let me first of all say there are no such thing as a perfect attachment style. We're all human. We're all imperfect. Human relationships are complex. That's why community is so hard. But our different attachment styles and things that begin to show up our life frame our lives in our capacity to trust God, our capacity to care for people, our capacity to be cared for by people, how we handle conflict, how we make commitments that are deep and sustaining. They're all affected by this. And you'll notice that there are times that you could be any one of these at a point in time in a given relationship. But how we love God and how we love people are often affected. So I want to talk first of all about what's called secure, the secure style. And I'm just going to give you some characteristics of this. You can take a picture of this on your phone if you want to go back. I'm going to move fairly quickly through it. So for a person who has this attachment style, when they look back at their primary caregivers, their mom and dad, they were present, they were attuned, they were emotionally attached. They were very engaged. And so people in this attachment style, they tend to be more trusting. They're comfortable trusting. Why? They were raised in an environment where trust was fostered. And so they move into relationships more naturally in trusting ways. They often are very interdependent. They're not needy people. Often very confident and secure in how they go through life. They easily connect with others. People with this attachment style can come into a conversation, and you've experienced people like this. They just talk about their emotions very comfortably. It's not hard to do that. They're very in touch. Why? Because it was safe enough to do that in their home. And so they just bring that with them, and so they're easily able to talk about their feelings, and they're open. They can acknowledge their own faults. It's not a difficult thing. They tend not to struggle with a lot of shame about the fact that they're imperfect. Their whole family was imperfect, but they talked about it. They repaired it. And so now they can easily embrace their own struggles and failures and listen to the concerns of others. They can look back upon their past, and they can remember painful memories, but not be dysregulated by them. And that's going to be an important one for future ones. They can look back because all families are imperfect. All families do stupid things. All families do painful things. Secure people look back, okay, that was in my family. Yeah, it was all there. But it doesn't dysregulate them. They're able to hold it in healthy perspective. They're not looking to blame or shame their past. They just see it as part of maturing in a family. People in this style, they can ask for help. When they are struggling, they're okay saying, would you help me? I'm struggling. I'm stressed out. Again, why? They could do that in their family. They could go to mom and dad and say, I don't get this, I'm struggling. And so now they just bring that with them into adulthood, and so they can show up in a small group and just say, hey guys, I need your help. I'm not doing so well. They tend to face conflict rather than avoiding it. Able to stay emotionally regulated in everyday situations and relationships. In other words, their life is not like a roller coaster. There's a steadiness. They stay emotionally regulated no matter what's going on around them in their lives. And are able to more accurately assess whether a person's safe or reliable based upon their previous experiences. See, they've experienced safe, reliable people, and so now when they enter a relationship, they have something to contrast it with. Okay? That's the secure person. And go back, let's go to the next slide real quick. So you look at the secure person, they bring very little anxiety into a relationship. And they connect very easily. They don't avoid relationships. They move into relationships, and they tend not to bring anxiety. Now, let's look at the preoccupied style and take a look at that particular style. And now you're going to begin noticing things start to shift a little bit. Now again, back up a slide for me, Jonathan, if you would, for just a second. Now notice about the preoccupied. They tend to move into relationships, but they bring with them a lot of anxiety. Now let's look at some of the characteristics. So go ahead, Jonathan. Let's look at some of the characteristics. The primary caregivers were physically present. Mom and dad didn't leave. They didn't experience necessarily divorce. Or this could be a single parent who was present. But the primary caregivers were present, but they were often inconsistent, preoccupied, or distressed. In other words, the child couldn't depend upon their parents. They were always wondering, is mom or dad healthy today? It wasn't always clear. Even though they were physically present, it wasn't an environment that was predictable. And so it created anxiety, this high anxiety. And so a preoccupied person rarely feels completely secure, known, or loved. They're always reading the environment. They're looking for signs. They're looking for evidence that something's going to shift, or this person, or when a friend or another relationship becomes inconsistent or detached a little bit or becomes busy, they are now reading into that relationship things that maybe are not true, but they are reading into it things because that's what they experienced. And so they tend to desire validation and closeness. They want to move towards a relationship. People who are preoccupied or their attachment styles often are hypercritical of themselves. They will tend to blame themselves for most things. When a relationship goes poorly, they will tend to take it upon themselves that they have done something to create that. And they look at others as being better than them. Others are good. Hypercritical of self. Preoccupied styles are most afraid of abandonment, vulnerable vulnerable to enmeshed relationships. Let me talk about that one for just a moment. I can remember growing up, I hovered a lot in this preoccupied space in my attachment style. I can't tell you how often in my bedroom I would wonder which of my parents are leaving today. You know, the fear of abandonment was very real. It was something I thought a lot about. And so what tended to happen to me when I found relationships that I thought were safe, loving relationships, I just locked onto them. I became enmeshed with them. Now, as we all know, that can be very suffocating to a relationship, and you can take your fear of abandonment into a relationship, and you can become enmeshed in something in a way because you don't want to let it go, and it becomes very unhealthy. Preoccupied people have a lot of access to painful memories. They remember their pain more than they remember the pleasant things. Like I said, are afraid of abandonment. They tend to dwell on negative thoughts and feelings. That's where the preoccupied comes from. They can be consumed by that. They tend to be emotionally dysregulated when facing relational disconnection. So if you're in a small group and you're having some conflict, this person is just all over the place. It dysregulates them. They're not sure what to do with the conflict. Their whole past experience makes it very difficult for them to lean in. And they are typically triggered by conflict and react by wanting more closeness. Now, very interesting to notice this. This person, when conflict happens, even though it dysregulates them, they want to move closer to the person, not away from the person. Why? They fear abandonment, you see? And so what happens when conflict takes place, they tend not to disappear, they want to move in a little bit. They want to correct it. They want to be close. And sometimes they want to be close in unhealthy ways. But they're going to move towards it. Remember? Move to the next chart. See, look at the preoccupied person. They bring a lot of anxiety into a relationship. But they're going to always move towards relationship. You see? They're going to keep moving towards it. That's part of who they are. They're not going to just step away. Now, the other two are called avoidant patterns. And so let's take a look at the dismissing avoidant. This person tends not to feel a lot of anxiety, and you'll take a look at, I'll explain that in just a moment, but they have a high avoidance of relationship. They tend not to move toward relationship. So let me take a look at some of the characteristics of what's called the dismissing avoidance style. The primary caregivers neglected relational and developmental needs. Do you see notice what's going on with the caregivers? Caregivers were present with preoccupied, just inconsistent. Now we're looking at caregivers that were neglectful. They did not nurture. They didn't handle relational things and developmental needs. They were largely, they just did not develop and invest in their kids. Now, these children tend to be self-reliant, just like the secure kids do, or the secure family. They're very self-reliant, but for different reasons. There's not a need to look to others for love or support. Whereas the person in the secure environment, they were interdependent and able to be very confident because they had grown up with that. This style tends to be very self-reliant because they don't trust people. They've grown up with messages that people can't be trusted. I have to trust myself. And so their self-reliance on the surface may appear to be a good thing, but what's behind it is often very, very unhealthy. They're most afraid of feeling engulfed by other people. In other words, they fear getting too close to people because they're going to lose themselves. They don't know what to do with closeness. They've never experienced it. And it feels like if I start moving towards people and developing intimacy, I'm going to have to surrender who I am as a person. And it can feel, they feel engulfed. Now, the next one is a very important one, are emotionally disconnected. It's interesting. So for just a second, go back to the slide, if you would, Jonathan. If you notice this person, the dismissing, I said they bring low anxiety. Here is why. Now go back to the slide. Let's go back to where we were. They're emotionally disconnected. People who are dismissant, avoidant, typically deny their emotional needs because no one paid attention to them. So they learned to not pay attention to them themselves. And so they don't bring a ton of anxiety that's surface, and often they have very sophisticated mechanisms for dealing with anxiety. And so they tend to have the least access to memories of sadness, anger, or anxiety. They look back up at their families and they don't remember. Very sophisticated denial mechanisms. As you've heard me say, I toggled between preoccupied and dismissive. I don't have a lot of memories growing up as a child. I learned not to have them. It was how I dealt with my anxiety. Dismissing, avoidant people are typically triggered by conflict, and they react by isolating to try to emotionally self-protect. Whereas the protective person moves towards relationship, this person runs away from it. And the moment there's a conflict in a marriage or with children or a small group, they tend to be the people who disappear. Because it so triggers them. And so people who are often dismissive or avoiding people are commonly people who invest mostly in careers, hobbies, and activities rather than people. They can be very successful people, but they're not as vested in relationships. They're invested in things that don't require emotional investment, okay? Let's take a look real quick at the fearful avoidant. And again, I'm kind of just whoosh, giving you a lot to think about. The fearful avoidant, you look at the last category, this is the person, I back up just that slide one more time. This person brings high anxiety and high avoidance. And here's why. You'll see why in just a moment. Bring the next slide up, Jonathan. Primary caregivers in this situation were harmful. These were environments where people were emotionally, physically, or sexually abused. And they deep inside, they have a longing to connect because God has given that to us. That's part of the Imago Dei in all people. But they are so afraid of being hurt, so afraid of what they've experienced as a child. They fear those closest to them will cause them harm. And so their past gets projected into all future relationships, tend to see themselves as defective and others as scary. Low trust for caregivers and unable to approach others for support. You may be leading a small group and you've got someone who just kind of stays on the margins. They can't trust other people. They're unable, you may not know their story. You see, there's a capacity there, emotionally dysregulated and chaotic. Conflict in relationships may trigger feelings reminiscent of the terror they experienced as children. This last pattern was my sister's, Darlene, my sister who died from cancer a few years ago. She was sexually abused by my father. That fearful avoidant was my sister. That's how she went through life. And so different experiences. Now, so let's go back. So now you see this spectrum. And again, none of us fit into a category and say, that's me, sure. But you may see patterns that are true of you. Now, with that just simple overview of the complexities of why human relationships are so complex, I want to read Colossians 3, the passage we looked at last week. And see if thinking about both the soils that we looked at 2 weeks ago and the styles of relationship, if we don't read these verses with a fresh appreciation for who we're called to be in community. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, and yet bringing with us all of our stuff, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And you see the brilliance of what Jesus intended the body of Christ to afford. The body of Christ becomes the place where relational repair and redemption begins to take place. It can take place. And it allows for things to begin to come into perspective and for us to mature and engage in ways that are meaningful. So here's the question I'm going to spend just a very, very brief couple of minutes with, and then I'll stop. And you all have been very gracious. I've given you a lot this morning. The question is this: how does an awareness that we all bring the patterns we have learned from our families impact how we live in community? The short answer is a lot. A lot. But let me give you 3 or 4 just very simple words of hope and how this awareness can impact and how we bring ourselves into community now in ways that are constructive. Number 1, be a student of your own story. Be a student of your own story. The patterns we see in ourselves, especially the unhealthy and painful patterns, are the place of spiritual transformation. See, that's where the Spirit of God wants to change us. We tend to focus on certain behavioral things. This is the really good work God wants to do in our lives. Some of you are familiar to Frederick Buechner. In his excellent book, Listening to Your Life, he wrote this. He said, listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery it is, in the boredom and the pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is a grace. Whatever our stories are, God's grace is present there. Earlier we sang, there are no mistakes. God is present there. Be a student of your own story. Secondly, be a student of the story of others. Friends, we should all be cautious before we rush to criticism or judgment of someone. There is a story behind the patterns we experience in them. What you bump into may be a pattern they bring with them from their family of origin, and the question we always have to ask ourselves, do we know the story well enough to understand? Until we do, we don't know enough to have an opinion, let alone criticism or judgment. We shouldn't be dismissing people or discrediting people or pulling out of relationships with people. And the reality is the people that we're in community with may not yet see the patterns we think we see so clearly. Only in safe, loving community will those patterns have a chance to be seen. Thirdly, bearing with one another must be our default posture. You've heard me say this before over the years. What's it mean to bear with someone? It simply means to accept the things about people that you will never change. So what's that look like? Well, Paul painted a very clear picture for us in Colossians 3. It means we treat each other with compassion and kindness and humility, gentleness, patience, forgiveness, love. We bear with one another. We don't assume responsibility to change one another. That's the Spirit's responsibility. And here's kind of the guiding thought of this whole series. Community is the soil for our spiritual growth and change. So here's the mystery and the magic of it. All the relational patterns you and I inherited in our lives that we bring with us are never healed in isolation. They are only healed in relationship. Relational patterns are healed in relationship. They're healed in community. That's why we do this. We seek to bring people together. Healthy spiritual community is the place where the patterns we've inherited from our pasts and how we relate to God and people can be named and repaired and restored to healing and flourishing. But it's messy. We got to stay in it for the long haul. That's where it takes place. Well, join me in a word of prayer, would you? Thank you for being patient as I've shared some of these thoughts with you this morning. Jesus, help us to listen deeply to our own story. To notice the patterns we've inherited from our pasts. but help us to notice them with a grace-infused courage. And help us listen deeply to the stories of others. Notice the patterns they've inherited. But notice those patterns with gentle curiosity. Remind us of the memories or the moments we've forgotten, ignored, or denied that shape how we love you and how we love others. And as you remind us, will you heal us of any edges of sharpness and show us the beauty of the story you are writing with each of our lives? And may this beauty you are creating become the story of the Grace family and community. In Jesus' name.
So I don't know about you, but when I hear these more technical observations about the human experience, it helps to bring a lot of clarity to my own experience with people. As a teacher, I think about some of these things every day as my students come to school and they come into the classroom. It has a huge impact on our day if there wasn't a lot of food at home over the weekend and they're hungry, or if there was a big fight over the weekend and they're scared and insecure, or even if they're just tired because they had to wake up at 5 o'clock and go from dad's house to mom's house so they could catch the bus. It's really overwhelming and discouraging sometimes as a teacher and interacting with these kids. So when I read the Gospels and I look at Jesus in the many ways that he interacted and encountered the people in his lives, and the way that he seemed to take into account personality and context, spiritual, family, cultural, and even the way people were experiencing their own body in that moment, it makes me very thankful that I am known by him, and thankful that all of us, as we come into this room this morning, he knows about our morning and our week and our year, and he knows about our childhood, and he considers those things as he interacts with each of us. So if you would, in thankfulness, respond with me to this great love that Jesus has for us, and read these words from Psalm 145. I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable.
The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love.
All your works shall give thanks to you, O Lord, and all your saints shall bless you. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand, you satisfy the desire of every living thing. He fulfills the desire of those who fear him. He also hears their cry and saves them.
Let's stand together and sing in response to our beautiful Jesus.
So in the past 3 services, we've heard Gary speak on community. We often think that it'll just happen as it's woven into the very fabric of who we are and what we're hoping for. We're made for community, but the thing is, we have to fight for it. We have to pursue it. These relationships allow us to grow and to become who we were meant to be. And it's never easy because we bring a lot with us, as we've all heard today. I'm sure as you've heard, you heard other people, and maybe you heard a little bit about yourself and you think, that's how I show up, and that's how others shows up. But Jesus is there with us in the midst of it. So I love how he wants us all to show up with his love and his presence, that he's chosen us, that we are loved by him. It's so good to be loved by a Father who knows us, who knows what we bring to the table every day with us, and what we bring into those communities with us. So for your benediction today, Father, let your loving kindness shine brightly on us. Fill our hearts with your joy that we may give away you to those in our communities. So you may go in peace. But I have a few announcements before you go. Don't worry, there's more to say. Adults, we'd love for you to stay and practice that community. There's snacks, drinks, people will be around, so please stay. Please get to know the people in our church. Students and kids, there's something for you guys. Those kids are upstairs, the students out back, and parents, a way that you can show your leaders kindness and love for their volunteering. Please pick up your kids at 11:45 so that they can go home too. You guys are dismissed.